Okay, this meeting of the Essex County Board of Chosen Freeholders is hereby called to order due to the COVID-19 outbreak and to be in compliance with the Governor's executive order. This meeting is being conducted remotely. The public is able to view this meeting via live stream on YouTube. A link for the live stream is posted on the Freeholder website, www.ecfnj.com. To all participants in this meeting, please be mindful to put your microphone on mute until speaking. Additionally, please identify yourself by putting your name on the record each time before you speak. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Freeholder Cooper.
Freeholder Cooper. Here.
Freeholder Graham.
Freeholder Graham. Here.
Freeholder Johnson.
Freeholder Johnson.
Here.
Freeholder Luciano.
Freeholder Luciano.
Here.
Freeholder Mercado.
Freeholder Mercado. Here.
Freeholder Pomares.
Freeholder Pomares.
Here.
Freeholder.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Here.
Freeholder Siebel.
Freeholder Siebel. Here.
Freeholder President
Freeholder
Gill.
President Gill.
Here. Okay, we will omit the salute to the flag since we're conducting this meeting remotely. However, for all those who have been affected and or lost to the COVID-19 virus in Essex County, we have lost 1,617 souls. I ask that we have a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. I have before me a certification that this meeting is in compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act. Madam Clerk, are there any transcripts to be approved?
Mr. President,
there are none.
Okay, Madam Clerk, let's move to the public comment session. Today's meeting is a combined conference board meeting, and we will vote on every item on the agenda. However, since we are meeting remotely, the public had the opportunity to submit questions and comments for consideration. At this portion of the meeting, the clerk will read the questions on agenda items only into the record at this time and state the names of the constituents.
Mr. President, the first public comment I have is from Jay Arena of Newark regarding Resolution 6.
My name is
Jay Arena. I live in Newark, New Jersey. I'm speaking in opposition to the shared services agreement between Essex and Union counties to imprison the latter's adult inmates at the Essex County Correctional Facility in Newark, New Jersey. While the U.S. likes to lecture other countries around the world about freedom at home, they are the world leaders in denying freedom to its own inhabitants. The United States holds some 2.3 million human beings in prisons, jails, juvenile correction centers, and so-called immigrant detention centers, concentration camps where people are held without criminal charge or trial. These numbers surpass both the per capita rate and the absolute number of every country on this planet. This includes even China, which has a population more than 4 times greater. Essex County, with its sprawling correctional facility and one of the largest ICE concentration camps in the county, is a key node in the larger U.S. gulag system. Now, in the midst of the pandemic, the U.S. incarceration regime, including Essex County Arm, has become a killing ground as the coronavirus rips through the New Jersey decrepit prison jails and detention centers. With 84 ECCF guards, 4 civilian employees, and a numerous and vastly undercounted number of prisoners contracting the virus, according to the May 11th Insider NewJersey.com report, continue to incarcerate people threatens the public health of all residents in Essex County and beyond. Therefore, instead of cutting deals to bring in more prisoners, the Essex County freeholders who have control over the county jails need to act now and release all the immigrants and detainees and many other prisoners as possible. They also need to use their power to immediately and permanently end the blood money contract they have with ICE to imprison immigrants. If you, the Essex County freeholders, had heeded the calls of your constituents made over the last 2 years, lives would have been saved. Act now before even get more blood on your hands. At the last Freeholder meeting, the board president, Brendan Gill, promised to introduce a resolution calling on ICE to release the immigrant detainees in Essex County concentration camp. Where is that resolution? Mr. Gill has a pattern of making promises to take action like he did last summer, calling for the end to the ICE contract, and then betrayed his promise. Mr. Gill, we cannot wait any longer. Lives are on the line. Let our people go. The next public comment is from Katie Singer of Millburn regarding Resolution 6. Please note that there are 5 direct questions in bold, Katie, for which I am awaiting answers regarding Resolution 6 and the shared services recommendation for Union and Essex County Departments of Correction. Few services would be required if the detained immigrants were released by ICE. We witnessed a hot movement towards this in the announcement by President Gill that he would draft a resolution calling for the release of the ICE detainees, and that would appear on the next meeting's agenda today. He stated such at both the previous Freeholder meeting and then a few days later on a call with Faith in New Jersey. Yet there's nothing to that effect on the agenda made public prior to today's meeting. Has President Gill gone back on his word regarding this resolution? And has the Board of Freeholders, who also skirted their duties regarding the Oversight Board? No mention has been made of this board of late, yet is due to be finalized by June 2nd. Phil Elijah claims he provided board nominations 2 weeks ago. Is that accurate? Who are they? Who will be on the board? And how will this information be made public? It is disappointing but not surprising that in the face of constant stream of facts and death, the Essex County Board of Freeholders and its executive continue to throw up their hands and look the other way and make false promises. Shame on the lot of you. The next public comment is from Jim Price. No resident submitted regarding Resolution 6. Last year, one of my colleagues submitted questions to the Freeholder about the demographics of the detainee population at ECCF. She received the following reply from Freeholder Johnson. I'm quoting directly from the letter. I also emailed a copy of the letter to each of the Freeholders. Dear Mr. Weber, during the public comment section of the Board of April 17, 2019 Public Safety Penal Committee meeting held at the Hall of Records, you requested the following data on every undocumented detainee in the ECCF that was transferred out of the facility to a different jail. How many detainees have been transferred? Where were they transferred to? When were they transferred? Why were they transferred? And how many detainees in the ECCF do we hold who are not residents of New Jersey? We forwarded your question to the Essex County Administration, and they responded in a memorandum forwarded to us on May 13, 2019 as follows. The ECCF does not initiate transfer, nor does it have any involvement in why any detainees are transferred. Demographic information that you requested is not maintained by the ECCF. Questions regarding demographic information should be directed to ICE. On behalf of the entire board, I want to thank you for your interest in Essex County. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact Freeholder Clerk Deborah Davis Ford at 973-621-4486. Sincerely, Rufus Johnson. One of the county's main arguments for not canceling the contract is that family and friends won't be able to visit. But if the county has no demographic info on who is in the facility and apparently has not bothered to ask ICE for that info, the county should stop using family and friends as an excuse to maintain the contract. County officials should also stop saying or implying that lots of people being detained are criminals or ex-criminals because, again, you actually don't know and haven't bothered to ask for the information. I would also point out that asking a private citizen to ask ICE for demographic info would be a fool's errand. ICE routinely ignores injunctions from federal judges as recently as last week in the case of Hector Garcia Mendoza. So the chances of me getting information from ICE are less than zero. I fully understand, as do all my colleagues, that Joe D. or Phil or the Freeholders cannot go to the ECCF and open the doors and let the detainees out, but you have standing as partners in a contract. There's nothing to stop any one of you from raising your voice and speaking out for public safety and public health, asking DHS ICE for the release of the detainees. Civil detention is not supposed to be a death sentence. Please use your status of elected officials and your voices as caring human beings to advocate for the immediately release of all ICE detainees. Next public comment comes from Whitney Strew of Newark regarding Resolution 6. I'd like to address my comments to Agenda 6 regarding the extension of shared services agreement with Union County and to house inmates in Essex County Correctional Facility. According to the fiscal impact section of the memorandum, Essex County will generate substantial revenue during the term of the agreement and cause more economical operation of the correctional facility. This calls to mind the continued reliance of Essex County on transforming incarceration where the jail inmates or ICE detainees into revenue streams. At a meeting last year, Freeholder Mercado referred to the county being in the corrections business, but that was exactly what I and so many others oppose. Mass incarceration in New Jersey is founded on racism and injustice. Bail reform in 2017 offered an opportunity to rethink this and to pursue what activists call decarceration, reducing the capacity of the carceral state. Instead, Essex County committed itself to jumping even more avidly on the Trump gravy train of profitable immigrant detention. Now detainee numbers are down, though not far enough. That number should be 0. And as a matter of social justice, we should be focused on reducing jail populations too, not seeking out cage bodies from which to extract revenue. A more economical operation of this facility is a smaller one, with its staff reduced in numbers and retained for more socially productive jobs in the public sector. I also note Section B.2 of the Terms and Agreement, which reads, Essex County reserves the right to deny any inmate for any reason at the discretion of the director of the Essex County Correctional Facility. Will the freeholders also apply that clause to future ICE detainees? With the numbers currently down, this is a good opportunity to publicly announce a permanent moratorium on new intakes and begin to wean Essex County off its addiction to the corruption of relying on ICE, Trump detention, and deportation to fund a relatively wealthy county. In your collaboration with ICE, along with your dependence on carceral revenue flows, and create a better future for us all. The next public comment is from Link Bella Hughes of Newark regarding Resolution 6. I urge the freeholders to vote no on the Agenda 6 item without sharing adult detention services with Union County. Instead, I implore each freeholder to begin building real political will and real social courage so that you can begin strategizing about how best to practice Essex County structural power to negotiate a plan to protect detainees from re-detention upon the contract's abolition. Contrary to the belief by some, freeholders are not powerless in the face of ICE statute as federal agency with total decision-making power over the correctional facility. What we need right now is bold moral leadership and a fearless approach to dealing with what is an oppressive, xenophobic, and intolerant organization that offers 0 activities that the county ought to participate in. Why not set an example for the rest of the country by terminating the ICE contract and using the county's structural power to defend detained people who ought to be living as free, meaningful, and productively orientated workers in the world? Please stop participating with a super dehumanizing agency and start doing what is necessary to ensure re-detention is avoided, because you have taken the time to finally form a vision, strategy, and tactics for making such so. The next public comment is from Claire Keels of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, Essex County, regarding Resolution 21. On behalf of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense and Everytown for Gun Safety, a big thank you to Brendan Gill and the Essex County Freeholders for ensuring this proclamation, making Gun Violence Awareness Day again in 2020. Gun Violence Awareness Day was started by the Friends of Hadia Pendleton. Orange is the color that her friends wore in honor of her life and legacy when she was shot and killed in Chicago at the age of 15, just 1 week after performing at President Obama's second inaugural parade in 2013. After her death, they asked us to stand up, speak out, and wear orange to raise awareness about gun violence. Friday, June 5th is National Gun Violence Awareness Day and the beginning of Wear Orange Weekend, which is dedicated to honoring the lives of Americans affected by gun violence and elevating the voice of every American who demands an end to it. With gun violence taking the lives of 100 Americans every day, our commitment to honor and act is ever stronger. Since 2015, Moms Demand Action has partnered with hundreds of mayors, governments, nonprofits, businesses, and individuals to make Gun Violence Awareness Day into a national event. Thank you again for being such a strong partner in our fight against gun violence. The next public comment is from Charlotte Gala, aka Mama Meow of Irvington, regarding Resolution 39. Good morning. To begin with, it's a true blessing for each one of us to achieve more together. This tragic coronavirus was an awakening of the importance of us together. Thank you for the Resolution 39 making June Adopt a Cat Month. We need to jumpstart activities to make it happen. Adopt, foster. What resources are available for the rescuers of the community cats in need at this time of a disaster? Who do we call? What vets are community in need of advocates during an emergency? A disaster can happen at any time. Where is help available? Phone numbers, websites, individuals to reach out to in a crisis. When is a resolution going to be adopted, as Robert Jackson stated at the meeting? Each town, township, or city should take the responsibility for their own community cats. Include in their budgets to TNVRN their own community cats. Lastly, where is the education of the clueless being advocated towards the community cats? The youth need to become involved. Education is the key to reaching the residents. Where are the materials, posters, the education tools that need to be provided for the quality of life for our residents and our community cats? It's time for thinking out of the box. It's 2020, one team, one dream, Mama Meow. And that concludes the public comments regarding agenda items, Mr. President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Madam Clerk, do we have any ordinances or resolutions for introduction and first reading?
Mr. President, we have none.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any ordinances or resolutions for listing purposes only?
Mr. President, we have none.
Okay, Madam Clerk, do we have any ordinances or resolutions on second reading and public hearing this afternoon?
Mr. President, we have none.
Okay, we will now move to resolution number 1, which is in the Department of Administration and Finance, Office of Management and Budget. We can read it into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the board. The first item deals with CARES Act funding that we received, and our treasurer, Mark Acker, is here to address those issues. This item, excuse me.
Thank you, Robert. Mr. President and board members, this resolution is just taking the $139,414,976.30 that was allocated to the County of Essex through the CARES Act, and this incorporates it into our budget. Since our budget's been adopted already, this is what's referred to as the Chapter 159 amendment, and this will include now the 139 plus million for the CARES Act funding.
Okay, Mr. Palavecchio.
No comments on this, Mr. President.
Mr. McInerney.
Mr. President, I have since had discussions with the county controller to see if there was a way of getting a better accounting or a more detailed accounting of the expenditures that we recently got a listing of. Hassan told me that he is working on that and that he's been in contact with the software company that supplies us our county accounting software. And again, we had looked for something at least on the level of breaking those disbursements down by departments. So again, he's working on that. We hope to have something soon on that. With regard to the overall insertion here, just treat this like, I mean, from this standpoint, treat it as if it's nothing more than an insertion of any other federal state grant at this point. That's not dealing with how we're going to expend it and all the machinations of control and due diligence applied to those funds. But I'm just saying from a budgetary standpoint, all this resolution does is it does exactly the same thing as it does for a CDBG grant or anything else, and inserts it in the budget as an item of revenue and as an item of appropriation, and also brings it over to the grant fund where the transactions, both from a receipt standpoint and an expenditure standpoint, will happen over in the county's federal state grant fund, which is a separate fund from the current fund, which we have our operating budget in. So that's a large 159. I guess our budget next year is going to be whatever we adopted plus 139,000, kind of skew the difference between the prior years, but we'll just have to take that into account when we're doing any analysis. But that said, that's really all I have to add here, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McInerney. Freeholders, do we have any questions or comments? Okay, so much needed.
Mr. President,
Freeholder Johnson.
this is for the administration. From that money, will any of the money be will we be reimbursed for the money that we put out during this pandemic?
Freeholder, yes, this money is to reimburse us. Right now we have two main sources of reimbursement. One is FEMA, where we anticipate getting 75% of eligible expenses back, and then we'll be able to balance the rest against this CARES Act money.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Freeholder President.
Freeholder Cooper.
Thank you. How is this 139 that we're dealing with right now for Resolution 1 being utilized? You just said a minute ago that we will be reimbursed for some items up to 75% for FEMA, and then I guess the remaining 25% will be charged against this 139 that we're voting on right now. And then what will the balance be allocated towards?
That'll be my account, Freeholder, I think. I've sent the number in. I don't think I sent it. No, it's really going to be, one is some expenses that are eligible under FEMA, that are eligible under the CARES Act that are not eligible under FEMA. For example, some of the programs that we're doing for feeding programs and helping homeless and helping seniors, that stuff is not eligible under FEMA, but it is under CARE. So we'll be able to use that. And the balance will have to, that we don't use, will have to go back to the federal government.
So, Mr. McInerney, the report that you're doing will give us a breakdown of what this 139 and what all the other expenses that we've incurred related to COVID?
Right now, the expenses are the total expenses which have been currently charged against the reserve that the county just reallocated from a snow removal reserve to a more broader emergency reserve. There's been no allocation between those costs that I've seen, those costs that have been presented to FEMA for reimbursement versus those costs that would be covered under the CARE Act. I'm assuming that once we see the results of the FEMA reimbursements, we'll know what balance can be charged against this. We do have another resolution on Resolution 2 that shows amounts of this money that's going to be available for reimbursement to county municipalities. So that is going to take up a large at least 30 million of this. But again, the expenses are being made now on an as-needed basis. They'll be delineated as to what has to go to FEMA for potential reimbursement, and then what subsequently will have to go against the 139. As was said earlier by the business administrator, the FEMA is going to take priority in those certain groups of qualified expenditures that qualify for FEMA. Anything after that, as long as it qualifies for the CARE Act, will be charged against the CARE Act.
Right. Thank you.
If Freeholders additional questions or comments? So it's safe to say, this is both for Mr. McInerney and for Mr. Jackson, that this is also a process that continues to change. So right now there are certain limitations on what this money can be spent on, but as this process continues to play out, we're hoping that they might loosen some of the restrictions on what this money may be used for.
That is correct, Mr. President.
I would agree, Mr. President, yes. But it is an ongoing process to see which bucket each item of expenditure that's related to, the COVID crisis, these expenditures belong in.
Okay. Freeholders, any additional questions or comments? Okay, Freeholders, have a motion from Freeholder Cooper and a second from Freeholder Graham. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper,
Yes.
Freeholder Graham,
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson,
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano,
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado,
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares,
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson,
Yes.
Freeholder Siebel,
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, let's move to resolutions number 2 and 3. We can read them to the record at a later time. Would also just remind freeholders that before they start speaking, that they need to also identify themselves again for the record each time that they speak. Thank you.
Mr. President, it's Michael Parlavecchio. I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. You just called off numbers 2 and 3. Added starter 41 is also related to number 3. I don't know if you wanted to add that to be read or discussed at this time.
Yeah, why don't we take number, you know what, why don't we take number 2? Let's take number 2. Let's take resolution number 2 first, and then we will do 3 and 41 in that order.
Very good.
Absolutely. Will do, Mr. President. Thank you. Item 2 is connected in some respects to item 1 in that we want to take $30 million of the $139 million and allocate it to our towns to support their efforts in addressing this pandemic. Anthony Abaleo and Kim Smeraldo, Brown Smeraldo from Government Services are here to address this item.
Thank you. This is Anthony Abaleo. The CARES Act went from the federal government to the state, from the state to the county, and it allows us to give a allocation down to the towns. Before you today is the MOUs for the 22 towns. They will be filtered back to us to be reviewed on a periodic basis. They will have to adhere to the CARES Act just like the county would be. And then the money lapses, as Mr. Jackson said, December 30th.
And just to be clear, this is a reimbursement program, so the towns would spend the money and apply to us for reimbursement. So there's no dollars going directly to the towns. It's a resubmittal. And Mr. Abaleo, yeah, Mr. Abaleo and Ms. Brown will be examining those submittals.
Freeholder President, I have a question. Have all towns responded, or are you still waiting for some? Anthony Abaleo?
We have all the towns back.
You have them all now. Good, thank you.
Freeholder President, is there a timeline for the, for spending this money? Is it just?
Yes.
The deadline as far as December 30th is concerned is a hard deadline. Checks have to be out from the county by that date, or it has to be returned to the federal government.
Freeholders, additional questions or comments? Mr. McInerney? No, we're a little out of order here, but we're going to hear from Mr. McInerney and then Mr. Parlavecchio.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Does the county have any latitude with the municipalities in determining whether they first go to FEMA as opposed to using their portion of the $30 million?
We cannot force them to go to FEMA. We have spoken and recommended it, and it seems like the majority, if not all, are going to go through FEMA first. It's better utilization of their possibilities.
Okay, all right. So there's also, to address Freeholder Cooper's question too, it's my understanding based on the agreement that Friday, March 29th is the deadline for submitting reimbursement applications for the month of March and April. I know you mentioned December 31st. Is that a hard deadline or is that a soft deadline?
Yes, I'm sorry. That previous question was getting broken up, so I missed part of it.
Okay.
You really have two schedules. You have a local schedule, which would be for March and April, then May, then June, July, forward through. The December 30th deadline is a hard deadline by the federal government, who says that if we haven't cut a check by then, they expect our money back.
But that's from the federal government. What I'm asking you is that the March 29th date, which is listed in the agreement between the county and the municipalities, is the deadline for the municipalities to submit their potential reimbursed expenditures to the county for March and April of 2020. Is that May 29th date hard? In other words, if a municipality submits something after that date, is the county still going to reimburse them for that?
Yes, we are. If you look on top, it says estimated dates. We've also said that if they find in August that they've missed something in March, we're still going to entertain it. Their suggested dates, we didn't want to put no dates in because then we were concerned about getting 5 months at a time and not being able to do the due diligence we should.
Okay. And so after last meeting and then Mr. Abeleo's, discussion about his work on this, he did forward to me some of the actual agreement that's between the county and the municipalities with regard to these funds. In addition, also discuss some of the procedures that he will use with regard to making sure that these expenditures are being reimbursed for expenses for which the law qualifies them for. But again, I think I raised this at the last meeting. It's very important to note that these federal dollars are still subject to the single audit. That means our independent auditor will also be required to perform standard auditing procedures, on these expenditures. So we've got a kind of a dual review process here. One is a review process, not necessarily an audit. The other one is an audit that's going to give you an opinion as to whether or not these funds from the federal government were expended for the purposes for which they were designed. Thank you.
Freeholder President, I have another question.
Freeholder Cooper.
So the towns that's listed, that's attached to this resolution with the various amounts, where were those amounts derived from? Did the towns pre-submit to you a list of activities?
I can address that issue, Freeholder. We basically looked at basically 80-20 split between of the money to derive a total amount that we would do. And then what we looked at was each of the municipalities. We looked at their population, their number of cases they had, and the number of deaths they had. And this was as a snapshot as of May 6th. So we looked at all those factors and did just sort of an average of what they would do. So if we did it based on all population, they would get a number, all cases, based on cases, all deaths. So we looked at all those scenarios, but then we kind of we averaged those and came up with the numbers for each town. So that's how we did it. It's a function of population, number of cases, and number of deaths for each of the municipalities. So it's a balance between among those three.
So then the agreements that's going to be in place with each individual municipality, do we have to vote on those separately, or is this resolution for that, to issue the agreements directly with these municipalities?
This covers all the agreements.
So if the hard deadline is December 31st, that we have to have everything back to the federal government or make sure that we disperse all our funds, is the deadline for these towns equally December 31st, or is it before that? Because you know, human nature, things happen. People don't always do things on time.
But if they can demonstrate that they spent the money, for example, they might not have, they could present us a check in, say, January that they spend for December, that's a hard spend. So it's a hard number, but it's cash on cash. If you haven't spent the cash by December 31st, it's not, you can't get reimbursed for it.
All right, and then who's going to be doing the ongoing monitoring, making sure that the municipalities are performing, that they're complying, doing what they're supposed to do? You know, oftentimes we're great at writing to get money in, but the compliance part, some of us struggle with it sometimes.
Mr. Abaleo is going to, and Ms. Brown are going to, Ms. Feraldo are going to be on top of it.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Parlavecchio?
I don't have anything to add to that, Mr. President.
Thank you. This was vetted fairly thoroughly in the leadership, the fairly robust discussion, extensive discussion. On the distributions, Mr. Jackson, can you again touch on that formula for me and the amounts? Specifically, when I look at the distribution of the $30 million, it jumps out to me that respectfully, you know, that the township of Cedar Grove is close to $1 million. You know, competing with you know, only a couple $100,000 behind the city of Orange. You know, $1 million under West Orange. So could you talk a little bit more about this formula that was used?
Certainly, Mr. President. Again, we just reiterate, we took population, number of cases, and number of deaths, % of the total, and used an average of those three to come up with the number. But if you take a look at Cedar Grove, the specific one you talked about, Cedar Grove is 1.6% of Essex County's population, yet it has 2.3% of our total cases and 6% of the total deaths related to this pandemic. Looked at it another way, Cedar Grove has, and this was as of May 6th, the number is actually going up more than this. Cedar Grove has 28 cases per 1,000 population, and the county average is about 17. It has 6.5% deaths per 1,000 population, and the county average is about 1.8. So it has been by far the most hard-hit town in our county with respect to this pandemic. And so if you look at a town, interestingly enough, so if you take a look, for example, at Verona, which has a similar population, Verona has, as I said, similar population. It's 1.7% of the county, but it's only had 0.7% of the cases and 0.8% of the deaths. So when you look at that number and you say similar population, if we just did it by population, the numbers that they would get would be equal. But when you look at how these communities have each been hit specifically by the pandemic, you can see that it varies quite a bit. And I probably can make the argument that if we did it more strongly on per 1,000 population analysis, that Cedar Grove could even make the argument of getting more. but just going to spreading out fairly. The virus has been countywide, obviously has had a great impact, but it has certainly hit some towns more than others. And this formula reflects that. Now, if Cedar Grove does not, for example, if Cedar Grove does not expend the money, if it only expends $400,000, then $500,000 is going to come back. But the allocation of the dollars are based on how hard each of the towns, we believe, how hard each town has been hit by the virus.
So 500,000. So in that example, 500,000 comes back in the sense that that's money that that they could have stated that they could submit a reimbursement. The municipality is still submitting the reimbursement to the federal government, or they're submitting it to the county. I thought they were submitting it directly to the federal.
No, they'll be submitting their FEMA submittals directly to the federal government, but this funding, this $30 million, they're going to be submitting that to Anthony and Kim, and they're going to be reviewing it and then saying yes. You know, and we're not picking on Cedar Grove, but we're just talking about them. Cedar Grove, you had $500,000 of expenses that qualified. Here's your $500,000, and the balance we take back, and then we have to give that back to the federal government.
Right. Okay. So in a sense, we're telling them out of our allotment, we can pay for this for you, which is a creative way to use the money, and commend the administration for coming up with this. But they might not hit that amount. We're telling them, listen, you have, and using the Cedar Grove example, you have $988,000 that you can come to us on for COVID-related expense and or reimbursement. So they could potentially use that to cover their difference, for example. So if they're putting in a reimbursement already to the federal government for their 75%, they could come back for their 25% through that allocation.
That is correct. And also too, Mr. President, let's say they've done a feeding program or a homeless support program as a result of that. They can also use this money for that, which they wouldn't get money back from FEMA on.
Okay. In the analysis of the numbers, was there any analysis of our long-term care facility deaths per municipality when calculating this amount?
We didn't break that out specifically, Mr. President, but if you look at some of the towns that have been harder hit, West Orange, West Caldwell, Cedar Grove, there's a correlation there between their number of deaths and the number of cases versus their population, which then kind of bears out in terms of the amount of funding that they got. So there is a correlation. We didn't break those out separately, but if you look at some of the smaller towns that got a little bit more, some of that is driven by the fact that they have long-term care or senior facilities in their municipality, an inordinate amount of those.
Are preventative measures reimbursable? Meaning as a COVID-related expense. So the towns that, I guess the question I'm asking Mr. Jackson is the towns that have these long-term care facilities that got hit, it looks like the hardest, are there steps that they can now take that may be able to be reimbursed by this money to help prevent further outbreak?
I'd say yes, but I would defer to Mr. Abaleo to the extent of it. It's, you know, everything else is within reason and logical and pragmatic, but I would defer to Mr. Abaleo on that one.
Thank you. Basically, what it comes down to is all these MOUs are with the towns. If the towns take steps to help out the long-term care facilities and in turn pay the bill, we can reimburse the towns. We cannot reimburse the long-term facilities themselves.
The towns can be reimbursed.
If they incur the cost, absolutely.
if I may, for Mr. President, example, let's say the town decides we're going to build a new senior center because the one we have is, that might not pass muster because, we need a bigger one or we need to expand it to have more social. I don't know that would necessarily pass muster, but those are the kind of things where it would be more preventative, but might not be deemed as being completely necessary.
So these, part of the challenge of getting the virus under control is to figure out both how the state and the county is going to deal with the long-term care facilities. So if you look at the numbers, over half of the deaths statewide are maybe 50% plus are coming from long-term care facilities, and testing seems to be, as much testing as possible, seems to be critical, and we're doing that in so many different ways. But does it make sense maybe for us to encourage these municipalities to use some of this testing, because they have to, those long-term, understanding that the facilities can't be reimbursed directly, but those facilities, my understanding, are now under a directive from the Department of Health to test everyone in the facility. Does the county and/or these municipalities have a role to play here to help every single one of those, folks who are in these facilities in our county get tested as fast as possible?
Again, I would defer to Mr. Abalea, but I would think that if, for example, Town A supplied testing materials to a facility to ensure that it got done quicker, I would think that would be something that would be acceptable.
I agree.
Okay. So it's something we can discuss further, Mr. Jackson, but it might be something we want to explore as a policy matter, because that just seems to be where so much of the focus is right now.
Yes, sir.
I do not have any further questions. If Freeholders, any additional questions or comments? Again, I think it's a great thing, and give all credit to the administration for coming up with this idea, creative idea to use this CARES Act money. This is resolution number 2. I have a motion from Freeholder Graham and a second from Freeholder Johnson to take resolution 2. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Sewell.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to resolution number 3. And Madam Clerk, what's the number of the corresponding resolution?
Hold
Yeah,
on
it's
one- It is 41.
41.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Walker, our Director of Risk Management, is here to is online to address this issue, and I believe also Mr. Parlavecchio has a comment to make as well. I don't know who you want to take first, Mr. President.
Mr. Parlavecchio, you have a.
Sure. If you want me to go through it, I can do that.
That might make sense, Mr. Jackson, or Mr. Parlavecchio to go through it first.
Makes sense. Yes, sir.
And then we'll, I do have some questions for the record, but if we could just go through the what I would call the process portion of this, I think it would make some sense.
Well, first, by way of description, Mr. President and Board, both 3 and 31 are the same items, essentially. It's to approve the appointment of Connor Strong and Buccalow Company to perform insurance broker services for the county's property and casualty insurance programs. 41 which is the added starter, is the evolution of some discussions between the board leadership and the administration. And what 41 does, as you will see if you from the decision memorandum from Mr. Jackson and Mr. Walker, 41 seeks to extend the broker contract for Connor Strong, who is the existing provider and existing broker for these services, extended by 6 months, an additional 6 months until the end of this year, December 31st, 2020. The reasons given, and again, I think it's fair to say this is in consultation with the board's leadership, is both the board and the risk management department wanted to make a change to the specifications for this brokerage contract that would allow the county to explore all options with this particular service. And what that would do, hopefully, is increase the likelihood of additional responses from additional broker services, and particularly minority and women-owned businesses. So by extending this contract for 6 months, it ensures that the county has a competent broker in place, ensures that the county is able to renew its number of policies that will be expiring at the end of May, and provide the county with ample coverage for these risks. And it serves to note that within this brokerage contract, there are 7 individual policies that are at play. And of those 7 policies right now, there are 6 different insurance carrier providers. So this requires a bit of coordination. This is not, as I've said to some people, this is not a monolithic insurance policy. This is 7 different lines with 6 different carriers. That meaning that one of the carriers actually has 2 of our policies, but other than that, it's spread out a little bit. So what this does is provides an opportunity to extend this contract with the existing broker and explore those other options that I just put on the record, and which are explained a little bit further in the emergency declaration and decision memorandum of the county administrator. Item 3, which was the initial matter on the agenda, was in response to an RFP that would have provided a fresh contract for a 3-year term. Again, what I think my recommendation would be is to, based on the discussions we've had, we, meaning Freeholder leadership, have had with the administration over a number of weeks, would be to adopt the added starter, number 41, and extends this contract through the end of this year. What I should put on the record is, by adopting number 41 and extending with the broker for 6 months, in my opinion, essentially moots number 3, and you could vote against that one to just provide some closure to it, to that RFP. What's happening is, if the goal is to change the specifications of this brokerage contract, then item number 3, under the existing circumstances, would become a moot point once you extend the contract through resolution number 41.
Mr. Parlavecchio,
Yep.
So we should take resolution 41 first.
That would be my recommendation, Mr. President. Again, if that's the will of the board to extend the 6 months, yeah, take that first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't want to be flip and call it a cleanup measure, but to complete the motion, it would be after assuming number 41 is adopted, and you could take number 3. I would recommend voting it down, so then it just completes that RFP process, because for the reason specified, that there's going to be a change to the specifications of this brokerage contract. An answer of saying yes, take 41 first.
Thank you. And if we were to take, so even if we take 41 first, the recommendation would still be for resolution number 3 would be to not withdraw it. It would be to take it and complete the process and have an up and down vote.
It can be withdrawn by the administration. I could recommend that be done after taking number 41. It becomes kind of a non-issue at that point. But either way, I'm satisfied either way. If the administration wanted to withdraw number 3 after there was a vote on 41, or if the board wanted to close it out with a no vote, that's okay too.
If I may, Mr. President, I think, and I would lean to Mr. Parlavecchio and Ms. Gassion on this one, but it seems to me that we're under obligation because we put the bid out of the proposal out. We got responses. I think and also to Mr. Coltrane, that we're under some obligation to do something. I'm thinking that we presented it to the board. It should be voted on one way or the other.
Mr. President,
maybe I'm wrong about that.
I'm comfortable with that, and that's what I was calling a cleanup act. But I would be more comfortable doing that if the board had already voted on number 41. So I think it's important to make sure that we have a mechanism in place through a broker that the soon-to-be expiring insurance contracts get renewed. And so I would like to have the board take action on 41 as the recommended resolution. And then once that's in place and the broker's in place, then I think it's fair to take to recommend a no vote on number 3.
To recommend a no vote. A no vote meaning on number 3. A no vote meaning for the board to vote no, or members to vote no.
Correct. Yes. To
not
vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not quote unquote not vote, but to vote no on item number 3 because the broker has already been given an extended term on item 41. And as Mr. Jackson said, there was an RFP put out. There were responses. This would close out that procurement process.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. McInerney.
I'm just questioning this. I mean, when you put something on the agenda, you have the option of voting yes or no. Once the contract, and again, Michael, I'm not a legal expert. Once the contract is fulfilled by an affirmation of the Board of Freeholders, how do you even have it on the agenda? What could you possibly vote yes? You know, you've already approved the contract, so why would it be necessary to even have it on the agenda?
So the way I'm looking at it, Frank, if I can, Mr. President, is item 41 is an extension of an existing contract. Item 3 was a standalone new contract. I think a standalone separate item, it wasn't an extension. So I think to close that out fairly would be to close out that RFP process. It's fair for the board to vote no on that.
Okay.
Because the guidance is there's an intent to change the specifications for this brokerage contract, meaning we're going in a different direction theoretically, not necessarily with a broker, but with a policy for how this brokerage contract will be specified for future RFPs.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Michael.
Mr. President, did you want to hear from Mr. Walker as well?
Sure, please.
Good afternoon, Freeholders and the administration. Tim Walker, Director of Risk Management. I think Mr. Parlavecchio summed up very succinctly our thoughts on the matter. Essentially, resolution number 41 would, in a sense, extend the original emergency declarations and that contract through the end of the year. In turn, we will finalize our renewals for this year, that our renewal that ends on 5/31, and will then, be allowed to do a 6-month renewal for our remaining policies, so that by the time the new contracts come out that we RFP in whatever manner you guys would like, we'd be looking at a 1/1 policy term. Were there any questions?
Mr. President, if I can, Mr. Walker, January 1, 2021 for a new policy term or for a new brokerage term?
Both.
Both.
As I understand it, what Resolution 41 does is extend the incumbent broker's contract till 12/31 of this year. In turn, since they are paid only based on renewals, the way for the county to have a $0 contract would be to change our insurance renewal from 6/1 to 6/1 and just do a 6/1 to 12/31 renewal. They will get their compensation for the 6 months extension without the county having to pay money. And we would start anew with our policies 1/1, which actually for the county is better for budgetary purposes.
Okay, so the renewals for the policies that are coming due would be through the end of 2020.
Exactly.
Would end. Okay, understood.
Mr. President, I have a quick question.
Sure, Freeholder Cooper.
Thank you. So, Michael, when will this go out to bid then again?
So it would be sometime between now and the end of the year, so that a new broker would be in place with enough lead time to procure new policies for 2021. So based on what I've seen in the past, I assume these might go out. I could ask Mr. Coultry. These might go out, let's say sometime in October, come back to the board perhaps sometime in, I don't know, November for new brokers. Maybe it's earlier than that, I'm not sure, but sir, I would certainly imagine the process to start sometime in the middle of the fall.
Mr. President, Courtney Gassion, Essex County Council. Just to add to Mr. Parlovecchio's comments, I think that it may be even a little bit earlier than that, given that either the incumbent broker or a new broker, whoever gets selected through the RFP process, is going to have to get ramped up to get policies in place for a 1/1 renewal. Since we're changing the renewal date, they're going to need enough lead time in order to make that process happen. So I would imagine, and this will be, Mr. Walker and Mr. Jackson's ultimate call, but I would imagine it's probably going to happen at the latest by October, so that they will be in place in time to get new insurance in place in the county by January 1.
Courtney, this is Tim Walker. I would recommend, if at all possible, if we put the RFP out even in September, because it takes, at least a month to respond to the RFP. You want to make sure that it's advertised properly and that enough people respond, and then our chance to review it. So I would like to have, if possible, have the new broker in place, at least who they're going to be, by October, so that they can do our typical marketing process, which takes at least 3 months.
So, Mr. President, I think to answer Freeholder Cooper's question, the specifications that will be put together will be ready by sometime in September, it sounds like. And then it will be put out, it will be advertised and brought back to this board, it sounds like, within 30 days of it, but sometime in October.
Okay.
there's additional questions or comments on resolution number 41? So on just a comment, then if we're back out with an RFP that quickly, we want to work through you, Mr. Jackson, and with Mr. Walker to try to address a lot of the issues that we discussed in the, during leadership and increasing the potential amount of responders, to the RFP itself. Because I still think it presents, in my opinion, an opportunity for the county. This really presents an opportunity for the county to continue and enhance its ability to diversify who it's doing business with.
Understood. Yes, sir.
Through you, Mr. President, just quickly, so it's not necessarily going to be one RFP. It's going to be possibly several RFPs, correct?
Correct.
It could be 3, 4, whatever that number is. Not
Right.
just a single RFP.
So and there's always good communication in this, but I'm going to put it on the record anyway. And we want to be as engaged as possible during that, as engaged as legally possible during that process, and before we hit go.
Understood.
I have to say, Mr. Jackson, of course, as usual, and Ms. Gassione as usual, but Mr. Walker did extend himself to provide a lot of information during our discussion. So I'm confident that we'll be able to do that between here, this point and September, whenever those specifications are developed.
Thank you, Mr. Parlavecchio. I appreciate that.
Just through you, Mr. President, yeah, I agree, but yeah, we just want to be on the front end of it, of the information part, before it goes anywhere. Thank you.
Okay. Additional questions or comments for resolution number 41?
Mr. President, just if I can put a cap on it, 41 is to extend the brokerage contract for 6 years, 6 months until December 31, 2020.
6 months.
6 years is a whole different discussion. Yeah. I apologize. It's not a Freudian slip.
Feels like we've been talking about it for 6 years.
Clearly.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parlavecchio. Mr. McInerney, any additional questions or comments? Okay.
No.
If there's additional questions or comments, I have a mover in Freeholder Richardson and a second from Freeholder Siebold for resolution 41. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Siebold.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes, to extend to the end of the year.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
No.
So moved.
Moving to resolution number 3.
And again, Mr. President, Michael Parlavecchio, as I previously stated, just to be clear, this would be to, my recommendation would be to vote no on this item as a mechanism to just close out this particular RFP specifications that went out, since the goal of the county is to change those specifications for 2021.
Okay, Mr. McInerney? I'm sorry, Ms. McInerney? No questions.
Yeah, no questions.
Okay. Mr. Jackson, Mr. Walker, anything additional to add?
Nothing to add here.
Mr. President.
Okay. I have a motion from Freeholder Graham and a second from Freeholder Johnson to take resolution number 3. Mr. Parlavecchio, I'm sorry, could I come to you? I get that.
I'm here. Yeah, I actually kicked it off, but I'm happy to finish it off. Again, I would recommend a no vote on this one in light of the approval of item 41. So I would ask that you vote no on this one.
Okay. Thank you. I have a motion from Freeholder Graham and a second from Freeholder Johnson for resolution number 3. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper,
No.
Freeholder Graham,
No.
Freeholder Johnson,
No.
Freeholder Luciano,
No.
Freeholder Mercado,
No.
Freeholder Pomares,
No.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson,
No.
Freeholder Siebel,
No.
Freeholder President Gill.
No.
So moved.
Okay, moving to resolution number 4. We can read into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Acker is here to address this item.
Thanks, Robert. This particular resolution will amend our budget to reflect some actual appropriation specifics. When we prepare our budget internally, there's always a capital improvement fund allocation, and it's typically $1 million. And in any given year, the executive might want to do some more capital work, specific, elevators at the zoo or something, and we would put that money in there while we're preparing the budget, and then split it out specifically when we introduce and adopt the budget. Unfortunately, this year, the exec had $6 million of projects, $2.2 million for the public works improvements, $3.8 for the acquisition of voting machines. There's 6, in addition to the typical 1 for the capital improvement fund. So when the budget was introduced, we had $7 million in the capital improvement fund. We didn't specify the other 6. So this corrects that.
Okay. McInerney.
Mr. President, this really doesn't change anything. It's just, as the title says, a change in the title and text applicable to these amounts being transferred over to the general capital fund.
Okay. Parlavecchio.
No additional comments.
Freeholder, additional questions or comments? I have a motion from Freeholder Johnson and a second from Freeholder Luciano. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Siebel,
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson,
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares,
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado,
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano,
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson,
Yes.
Freeholder Graham,
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper,
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, moving to resolution number 5, which is from the Office of County Counsel. Could read it into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson.
Mr. President, County Counsel Gassion is here to address this item.
Thank you. Courtney Gassion, Essex County Council. Mr. President, this is a request for an approval of a professional services agreement to provide legal services to Essex County regarding the matter of Muhammad Loosely et al. Versus the County of Essex et al. With the law firm of Inglesino, Webster, Y. Casala, and Taylor. The contract would run from May 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020 in an amount not to exceed $75,000. This is a case that emanates from the Essex County Prosecutor's Office, Prosecutor Stevens, as well as several individuals in the Essex County Prosecutor's Office have been named in the complaint, as has my office, which is the reason for the conflict and why we are seeking to send it to outside counsel.
Okay. Mr. McInerney?
No questions.
Mr. Parlavecchio?
Yes. Ms. Gassion, this is the initial contract for this litigation?
It is. The complaint was just filed on May 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Freeholders? Okay. Hearing or seeing none, I have a motion from Freeholder Luciano and a second from Freeholder Mercado. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper,
Yes.
Freeholder Graham,
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson,
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano,
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado,
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares,
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Rich,
Yes.
Freeholder Sebo,
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Moving to resolution number 6, which is from the Department of Corrections. We can read it into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Director Ortiz will address this item.
Good afternoon. Alfaro Ortiz, Director, Essex County Correctional Facility. I'm here to advocate for the passage of this contract with Union County for the housing of their adult inmates, both male and female, at the Essex County Correctional Facility by the dates indicated within this resolution. I'll take any questions anybody may have.
Mr. McInerney?
Mr. Ortiz, is the rate the same? It's $98 per.
That is correct.
So that was the same as what it was before?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay, just one other question. Just on the transportation side, the contract says that the Union County is responsible for transportation of prisoners, I believe, to and from the jail. Then there's a portion of the contract that deals with Essex County taking inmates to, or Union County inmates to the hospital or things of that nature. Is there a portion of transportation that Union County is responsible and a portion of transportation that Essex County is responsible for reimbursement? But is that bifurcated?
Yes, it is. Alfaro Ortiz, Director, Essex Jail. For hospital purposes, that's included within, for hospital transportation purposes, it's included within the $98. For them to go to court, the Union County Sheriff's Department or whoever they designate over there does that transportation.
Right. It does say that an off-site hospital or treatment facility, the Union County shall reimburse Essex County a rate of $40 per hour. So is
That's correct. If we do that, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No additional questions.
Okay. Freeholders? Okay, we have a motion from Freeholder Mercado and a second from Freeholder Pomares. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Sebo, Freeholder Sebo.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to resolutions number 7 through 11 and number 20, which are all in the Department of Public Works. To read them into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item 7 is a response to a request from the Township of Millburn. This is going to reduce the speed along Millburn Avenue between Morris Avenue and Short Hills Avenue from 35 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. This is going to improve safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicular traffic. Minimal cost to the county. We will replace and maintain the signs. And there has been an ordinance passed by the Township of Millburn. Number 8, the Division of Engineering within the Department of Public Works is a contract award to Oxford Electric Contractors, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. They're going to provide general electrical services to various Essex County facilities, a 24-month agreement, an amount not to exceed $483,900. We received 4 bids. This is for electrical upgrades and repairs for our county buildings. And this is open-ended as needed contract with funding through capital. Number 9 is similar, but with respect to plumbing services for various county facilities. It's a 1-year contract from the date of award in an amount not to exceed $425,826. This again is through open-ended as needed and done through capital funding. Number 11 is a change order with John O'Hara Company for the Unit 320-321 University Avenue, which, as you know, the board awarded a contract a while ago for that. The original contract was $15,002,802. This change order represents a 3.8% change order, well within the 20% allowance. And this is due to some additional outlets and some additional stair work renewal that had to get done as part of the overall deal. And also we added some additional exterior lighting around the property. Let me go to number 11 is receiving an item of revenue from the State of New Jersey Department of Transportation from the 2020 Local Bridges Fund in the amount of $2,169,789. This is for bridges, the scour critical remediation, where the foundation of the bridges have become exposed and are washing out. There are going to be 10 bridges done as part of this process, 2 in Bloomfield, 2 in Livingston, 3 in Millburn, 1 in Nutley, 1 in West Caldwell, and 1 in West Orange. Just by way of note, Newark gets its own funding to provide for this program. We estimate that this funding is going to provide the capital, that the grant money that we're going to get from the state is going to provide for essentially all of this, except for about $40,000, which we will take from capital. And finally, number 20 is a contract award to Absolute Protective Services. Again, the lowest responsive and responsible bidder to provide for the inspection, maintenance, and testing of our fire protection system throughout the county. This is a contract from May 1, 2020 to April 30th, 2022, in an amount not to exceed $265,610. The previous contract that we have for this was $172,000, $173,000 roughly, but we have added an additional allowance in this contract. We've also added 320, 321 Bloomfield University Avenue and the Police Academy into our overall buildings that have to be inspected and maintained. So the contract's up a little bit. And that covers it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. McInerney?
On number 7, I don't have anything. Should I go through all of them, Mr. President?
Yeah, why don't we go through all of them?
Okay, number 8, I do have a question. I'm looking at the bid tabulation form in the documentation presented with the resolution. And Oxford Electric has there's 4 categories here, or I should say 5. Electrician, foreman, regular time, electrician, foreman, overtime, electrician, journeyman, regular time, electrician, journeyman, overtime, and then there's materials. In Oxford's listing, there's no distinguishing hourly rate between regular time and overtime, whereas in the other bids, there obviously is a difference between what has to be paid for regular time and overtime. In addition, there's no distinguishing, no difference in the rate between a foreman and a journeyman. I mean, they're responsible for paying overtime regardless of what they charge the county. I understand that. But was this looked at all, and anybody questioned why there's such a flat rate, a rate that's lower than any other rate of the other bidders, number one, but also that there's no distinguishing variance between the level of expertise and obviously the regular time and overtime issue?
I'm just doing a little math here. 2,500. I have to get back to you on that one, Mr. McInerney, with Director Varghese, and maybe Matt, you can try to get him, but I don't have an answer for that one, for that particular question.
I mean, Mr. President, I think it's something worthy of waiting for an answer.
Oxford is charging the same rate for regular time and overtime.
Yeah, we got a response back, Mr. President, from Mr. Varghese, and they are in fact charging the same rate for regardless of when the work's performed. They're charging the same amount. So if it's quote unquote overtime time, they're charging the same amount as during the week.
Through you, Mr. President, I don't think, is that legal? I mean, overtime is overtime, and you have to, after 40 hours, you have to pay time and a half. You can't just because you feel like it, pay someone a flat fee. That's not how it works.
Well, they're not, I don't think they're saying that that's what they're paying, the employees, that's what they're charging us.
So I mean, but they have to put that in their bid specs because, so by them not having those figures in the bid document, then they can certainly have a lower bid proposal to the county because they're not counting overtime and foreman rates and all of those things like everyone else. So then their calculation is not right. And I don't think this is one that we should vote on. This one we should pull until we get the right answers, Mr. President.
Yeah, they're required, as you said, they're required to pay overtime according to their whatever their agreements are. What they charge us is what they're bidding on. We don't dictate what they, other than prevailing wage and things like that. We don't dictate what they pay their people. This is their charge for us, regardless of when they come out. They're charging us $72 an hour, and what they pay their people is not. We don't legislate what they pay their people, other than the cases where they're required to pay prevailing wage.
Understood, but that's part of the problem with these non-union contractors and how they cheat on their bids. I'm not saying that this particular company cheated. What I'm saying is when they fail to pay their employees, or even they don't even have it in the document. So there's something wrong with that. So I'm definitely going to vote against this. I can't vote for this.
So we have a recommendation for Mr. McInerney to hold this before the timing of this contract, Mr. Jackson. Just give me a sense of
What's the date of the contract? Date of award. I guess what I'm trying to understand is what is going to change between, this is their bid, that it wasn't required that they have differentiation between the two. This is what they bid to charge. Nothing's going to change between looking at it or not looking at it. This is their bid. It's a perfectly legal bid in that respect. And then, again, they're not saying that they're not going to pay people overtime is required by law. This is what their bid is.
But they're not saying that they're gonna pay either. But we should at least have that information. They should at least be able have to give us that information that they are gonna pay. Because right now we don't know what they're gonna do. And so, do we really want to do business with companies who may not pay their employees the right rate? Is that something we want to be associated with?
No, I don't think that's really even the issue, but I would lean to Mr. Parlavecchio to.
What I was going to say, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Vice President, would there be value if the prevailing wisdom is to hold this, to bring the vendor in on the next meeting, maybe to answer some questions directly? If this were a live meeting, I understand we're all under different circumstances. But if it were an in-person meeting, we would have the vendor on a nearly $500,000 contract to answer questions. Maybe that would be one way to get some information.
Can you get him on the phone?
Mr. President?
McInerney?
Yeah, my questioning certainly wasn't that the vendor wasn't paying overtime, but it certainly, when you look at the way that the other bids were structured, that there's no differentiation between the classifications of worker. When you looked at there's no differentiation in overtime versus regular time, it was a question that just needs an answer. So what the answer is, I agree with Mr. Jackson that the vendor, there's no representation from any bidder that they're paying overtime or not. It's required by state law. But at the same time, it was certainly an eye opener to see such a straight hourly rate. Again, I don't know what the answer is, but it certainly begged the question why. That's why I asked.
Mr. President, this is Courtney Gassion, Essex County Council. If I could just add too, maybe Mr. Poultry could just comment on the bidding documents in the bid packet that every vendor is required to complete, which would require them to be in compliance with all state and federal wage and hour laws. So while the bid specifications may not identify that issue directly, all of our bidding documents that go out for contracts would require that in any event to pay and comply with the state and federal wage and hour laws.
No, for this one.
Mr. President,
Just for Venor.
Mr. President, through you, Mr. President, I'd like to remind people to mute their phones when they're having conversations.
Mr. President, if I may make a recommendation, if we could move through the other ones, we're getting some of the information that was requested, trying to get some information that was requested, and maybe we can come back to it later on in the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. McInerney, do you want to continue?
Yes, and number 9, did you say, Mr. Jackson, that number 9 was certification of funds was for capital, or is this a general appropriation?
Did I say capital?
I thought you did. That's why I questioned it.
Let me see. Yeah, account code is 04-2015. So that would be operating. I'm sorry. You're correct.
Oh, it's operating. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Number 9, I don't have any questions on number 10, so I think number 20, I didn't have any questions on number 20 either, Mr. President.
Lisa.
Mr. Parlavecchio.
I don't have any additional questions on those items. Sounds like the request is to table number 8 until sometime later in the meeting.
We'll talk about that later.
You could vote on 7, 9, 10, 11, and 20.
Through you, Mr. President, just want to remind people that we can hear your conversations when you're not muted.
Mr. President, Freeholder Cooper, I have a question for item 10.
Freeholder Cooper.
Mr. Jackson, I'm sorry, I might have missed your explanation for item 10. What is the change there that's precipitating almost a $500,000 increase in the change order?
I'm just getting to the item. Just by way of context, again, the law says a 20% change order is, we don't have to, we're allowed to do that. So this is a relatively small change order, but this is really driven by the fact that in going through and doing the work, there are a couple of things. One is some of the, let's go through this. Some of the electrical required for copiers, printers, hand dryers, water fountains, et cetera, were not sufficient once we got in the building and started laying out where cubicles and so forth, and we're going to go. So we had to put in more there. That's the bulk of this change order. It is, let's see. It is $287,000 of the change order is for that, for additional electrical. There's some additional data requirements that came in as well because of doing more work with the state. Metal detectors, time clocks, et cetera, that we use more. So there was a lot more of that than we had in the original plan. Then there was, when we originally went in, we thought that we were going to be able to just recondition the stairs in the building, but we found out that we had to pull out everything, do new edging and so forth, basically do brand new flooring and subflooring for the stairs. And as I said, we did add some additional outside lighting around the building to make it more safer at night, but also candidly more aesthetically pleasing as well. So those are the three elements. The electrical was 287, the stairs was 93, and the exterior lighting was 112.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Freeholders, any additional questions? Mr. Jackson, are we still waiting on information for?
We're still working. I would just suggest we move on, Mr. President. If we get to it at the end, we can. If not, then we won't have it. But we'll need a little bit more time.
Okay, so I have a motion from Freeholder Palmaris and a second from Freeholder Siebold to take resolutions 7. Which one are we not going to have to take action on?
Holding number 8.
Yeah, everything but number 8. So 7 through 11 minus number 8 and number 20. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Siebold.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Palmaris.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's move to resolutions 12 and 13, which are from Parks. We can read them at the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Jackson, you're on mute.
He's muted.
I'm sorry. The clerk has got me scared to take my phone off, put my mic on. Contract with Hudson Community Enterprises to provide daily porter services for our golf courses in an amount not to exceed $97,020. They're going to be doing this. As you know, Hudson Community is a shelter workshop, and because of the nature of its employees, it gives us an opportunity to do some non-fair and open contracts with them. This contract is going to be used to do the extensive cleaning and sanitizing for COVID-19 in our golf club houses as well as the bathrooms. And we fully anticipate that this amount of money will be reimbursed from our COVID-19 emergency reimbursement plan. And again, this is an open-ended contract to be used as necessary. Item 13 is a contract to 5 low bidders for different items to provide for pesticides, fertilizers, grass seed, and sod products for our golf courses. There are 5 vendors: Grassroot Turf Products, Site One Landscaping, Nutrient AG Solutions, Andre and Son, and Harrell LLC. And they will be providing, again, those materials for our golf courses. That's item 13.
Mr. Palavecchio.
Reiterate, Mr. Jackson explained number 12 is a bid exempt contract, and number 13 is a low bid, but for separate awarded items on there. So it's been awarded to multiple vendors under this one resolution.
Mr. McInerney.
Mr. Jackson, on number 12, that's a contract that, my understanding, employs the handicap. The hourly billed rate to the county is $19.25. I certainly don't need this information now, but I think the board would be curious to know, at $19.25, what would be the hourly rate paid to those individuals that perform this contract? Some
Understood. I'll get the information.
Just so we can get a barometer that they're being paid fairly, that's all.
Understood.
Certainly not anything to hold us up.
Okay. Freeholders, additional questions or comments?
Can I? Yeah.
Okay, I have a
Yes, Freeholder President, this is Freeholder Cooper.
sure, Freeholder Cooper.
Administrator Jackson, you provided to us some of the background information for where the company is located and the number of people that they employ, but I didn't see that attached for the later items on the agenda today, like for the IT item and for this Hudson Community item. I know the question that Mr. McInerney raised, that was something that had come to mind for me when I looked at the hourly rate. I wanted to know how much what these people earn, but it's important for me to know, especially since the vendors are not before us, to ask where the vendors located and if they have any Essex County residents employed by them. So can you please in the future provide it for all of the contracts, whether they go out to bid or not? Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Freeholder Cooper. Additional questions or comments? Okay, I have a mover from Freeholder Siebold, second from Vice President Richardson to tweak 12 and 13 as one. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Siebold.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, moving to resolutions 14 and 15, which are from the Office of Purchasing. We can read them into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson?
Excuse me, Mr. Coltre will be addressing these items. Not sure if he's still on. Well, I'm not sure if he's still, I'll address these, Mr. President. Item 14 is a contract award to two responsive bidders, JML Medical from Lakewood, New Jersey, and Medco Supply from Amherst, New York, who's a new vendor. We had 4 people last time for this contract. We have 2 this year. Both of these folks are receiving contracts on a line item basis in an amount not to exceed $200,000. And this is to provide over-the-counter pharmaceuticals, again, on a 2-year contract from May 1st, 2020 to April 30th, 2022. Item 15 is a contract with, again, with Hudson Community Enterprises to provide on-site shredding services from May 16, 2020 through May 15, 2021, in an amount not to exceed $125,000. This is a countywide service. This is the same vendor and amount as our last contract. The amount is 8 cents per pound of shredding. And last year we spent about $21,000 on this service.
McInerney?
I have no questions.
Vecchio?
Yes, please. I have a question on number 15. On-site shredding services. What does that mean? Is that a big shredding truck that comes up periodically or something different?
It's kind of like a little bit of all of the above. You also see in our hallway sometimes you'll see large shredder containers that people put the shred and put there. So it's all that service, Mr. Paulbeck.
Thank you.
Okay. Additional questions or comments, Freeholders? Okay, seeing none, I have a motion from Freeholder Vice President Richardson and Freeholder Cooper on resolutions 14 and 15. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Siebel.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, thank you. Moving to resolution 16 and 17, which we can read into the record at a later time from the Office of the Prosecutor. Mr. Jackson?
Mr. President, 16 is a resolution by the board to approving participation with the state in a training program for juvenile prosecutors in the amount of $6,656. This pays for them to go to some national and local training. And it's for the period January 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. And you'll see there's a matrix attached there to talk about some of the events and the amounts that they would go to. And item 17 is the budget insertion, allowing us to accept the dollars to provide this service to the prosecutor's office, and particularly to the juvenile prosecutors.
Mr. McInerney?
I don't have any questions on these, Mr. President.
Vecchio?
No questions on these.
Okay, Freeholders? I have a motion from Freeholder Cooper and a second from Freeholder Graham. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Siebel.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, moving to resolution 18, which is from the hospital center. We can read it into the record at a later time. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Del Gaudio is here, correct? For that one? Yes. Yeah, Mr. Del Gaudio should be online for this one.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Frank Del Gaudio, Director, Department of Health and Rehabilitation. This contract is an emergency contract with Aviana Healthcare. The purpose of this, it was originally set up to provide emergency staffing for the hospital center. It was based on trending we were seeing with the COVID pandemic. In the event we needed to bring in additional staffing to supplement our staff that was well and were working. We then expanded the contract to assist with our temperature screenings and wellness checks at our employee entrances for various county buildings. We feel that having a health professional that can actually talk to someone that may be symptomatic and knowing the proper protocols for the temperature screening would be better than having assigned employees that is really not their focus or their job to do that. So that's what this contract is about. This company actually does a lot of home health services, which a lot of those were discontinued with the pandemic, having a lot of caregivers in the households when people were not working. So it benefits both of us. And it is only, there's only a cost involved if we utilize the services.
McInerney.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Parlavecchio.
No questions.
Freeholders, questions or comments? So this is as needed?
Mr. President, Frank Del Gaudio, Director of Health and Rehab. It is as needed. The pricing is in the contract. It's an hourly rate that's paid.
Okay. So
Mr. President, Freeholder Cooper.
Mr. Freeholder Cooper.
Thank you. Administrator Jackson, is this organization just going to be working at the hospital center, or are they going to be doing the screenings at the other county buildings per your memo?
They will be doing the screenings at the employee entrance in the Hall of Records, Veterans Courthouse East, Veterans Courthouse West, the Burn Complex. So they will be doing those screenings as well.
And if I could just, Mr. President, through you, Courtney Gassione, Essex County Council, those are the screenings that we have in place currently, Freeholder. As the county puts together a return to work plan for its workforce, we anticipate that those screenings may be expanded to other buildings and other county facilities. So that's where they are presently. There's 4 sites at the court complex, but they may be expanded. We wanted to have this contract in place so we have the available personnel if and when we do expand those temperature checks.
Okay. Additional questions or comments, Freeholders? We have a motion from Freeholder Graham and a second from Freeholder Johnson. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Sebo.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper. Freeholder Cooper. Absent. Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to resolution number 19, which we can read into the record at a later time, which is from our IT office. Mr. Jackson.
Mr. President, Mr. Hunt is here to address this item.
Carl Hunt, Chief Information Officer. This is for the Microsoft Suite, which actually covers the email security, storage, and recovery for email, including Word, Excel, Word projects, and also for CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Manager, which is DFAB use this to manage inbound and outbound clients.
Okay, Mr. McInerney.
Excuse me. Carl, again, this is just a license?
Yeah, this is for the the license to use these products. Yes.
And this is throughout the county, everybody in the county?
So as of today, we are Public Works, the jail, Public Works Correction Center, and the sheriff. Everyone else is moved over already.
And once those other departments are moved over, will this license increase?
Yes, it will increase. So we have seen an increase, but actually the cost per seat has gone down. So we went down from $27.98 to $15.76. So when we add the next group, it will go down to about $11.74.
And that's per month or?
Per year, yeah. Per month, yes.
$11.76 per year?
Per year, per month, yes. Sorry.
It's per month. It's got to be per month.
Yeah, per month per seat. Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And this is a state contract, so I assume that there's a lot of, gives a lot more, credibility that it's probably the best price you're going to get.
Yes, it is. Yeah, yeah. So the price is based upon the X amount of seats at use. So as you add additional seats, the price actually goes down, and yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Carl.
Sure.
Carl Vecchio.
No questions on that.
Freeholders. Resolution number 19. I have a motion from Freeholder Johnson and a second from Freeholder Luciano. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Sebo.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, for number 8, I don't know if did you want to go back to number 8, Mr. President?
If you're ready, let's go back to number 8.
We have a couple of people online. Our engineer, Mr. Varghese, is on the line. The representative from Oxford and Mr. Coltre has some information about the other vendors other bidders who are on the who bid on this as well. We'll start. Mr. Varghese, do you want to start, please?
Again, the rate they charge us has no meaning in what they pay their employees, and they have assured that they pay their employees overtime and they comply with all the prevailing wages as per the state regulations.
Mr. Coltre, do you want to comment on the other per hourly amounts that were in the bids? I don't know if he's on mute.
I was on mute.
Okay.
Yeah, and there I am. In the page 58 of the proposal on the basic boilerplate, it does say that these prices can change at any particular time, depending on the project that they're bidding on. And that was for all the bidders in this particular case, and it's our standard boilerplate.
Mr. President,
Okay. Did you want to hear from the vendor?
can I just address something that we just said so I don't forget it?
Please.
You said the prices can change, the hourly rates can change, those that, from something different than what's in the contract?
What happens is if there are specific projects, the boilerplate says it could be subject to change.
How many times does that happen? I mean, if we're voting on a contract.
Never in the 5 years that I've been here.
I assume it's $72 an hour. Why wouldn't you go back out to bid if the rate's gonna change?
Well, excuse me, I'm just saying it's subject. It doesn't mean it happens, and then that rate would have to come back in front of you, meaning the board.
Okay, it would come back to the board,
Of course.
change in rate.
Again, Sanjeev Varghese, the county engineer, we have never changed this rate. This is the rate we go by, and that's the only rate we pay. The vendor pays the overtime, and he only charges us the rate we agreed under the contract. There is no change in this rate.
All right, so in this contract, there is no change in rate at any point in time.
Any change in any contract has to come back to the board. The rate, the board approves is the rate.
All right, there said there was change in rate. I just want to make sure that we understand that. That's all.
I have a question. Mr. Coltrane, do you have the Venor electric in front of you? The second person?
Yes.
What were their hourly rates for regular and what were their numbers, corresponding numbers per hour?
Yeah. They're for just make sure I have it. For number one, electrician foreman regular time is 107.37. Electrician foreman overtime is 214.74. Electrician journeyman regular time 91.76. Electrician journeyman overtime 183.52. Material markup 15%, $15,000.
So again, making the point that their overtime rate is lower than the overtime rate, if you will, for the winner is less than the regular time for the second place person.
Could you say that again, Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, I didn't get that. Would you repeat those numbers?
The overtime rate for an electrician is $72 for the winner. The regular time rate for the second place person is $96 an hour. Am I correct?
But through you, Mr. President, but so the winner has just a flat rate. Those rates that Mr. Coltrane just stated are the state prevailing rates. If you go on and look at electrician rates for the state prevailing rates, those rates that he just talked about are those state rates. So I don't know where this guy gets just a flat $72 for an electrician. The rates that Coltrane just said are the right rates. Those sound more like the state prevailing rates, not $72.
We have the vendor online as well, Mr. President. If you're Artie from Oxford is available.
Yeah, actually, this is Igor from Oxford Electric. The contract rate, it's a little bit different from prevailing wage rate because it's competitive price, and we did it exactly like in previous terms. We been servicing Essex County, I believe, at least a couple times before, and there's a contract price and prevailing wage rate. There may be a difference between them. It's always a difference between them on all electrical contractors. Some difference could be close, some difference could be a little bit far apart. No matter what the contract price means what the electrical company charged Essex County. For example, Oxford will charge $72. It's an obligation by contract. $72 per hour is a charge to the Essex County. As for prevailing wage rate, it's governed by the state of New Jersey, and we have to provide certified payroll to public body, in this case to Essex County. So we pay our electricians prevailing wage rate, no matter which contract rate. That is the things. The contract may require 10 hours a week or maybe 1 hour a week. Electrician works 40 hours a week, and on different for different customers, he gets paid whatever he works for public body for Essex County. He gets paid prevailing wage. Whatever Essex County requests a job from us, they charge by contract rate. That I don't know if I clear enough. That's the difference, and that has been done for years. And I don't think so. He has anything we can change.
So through you, Mr. President. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. President, please have the vendor state his name for the record.
My name is, I'm owner of the company, Igor. I, G like George, O, R like Robert, Igor, Vinapur, if I can spell. My name is on the contract. V like Victor, I, N like Nancy, O, K, O, U, R like Robert, O, and V like Victor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, Freeholder Richardson here. So my question to the vendor is, so you do not pay state prevailing rate?
Yes, we do not. If you're asking, do we put this prevailing rate in the contract? Yes, we did not put prevailing rate in the contract. We did not. In this case, because we would like to be competitive and get the contract and continue to serve Essex County. I believe our competitors was at $75 or something like that. So way close, really close. So if we will give, for example, $78, it will be still not prevailing wage, but we're going to lose the contract in this case.
So through you, Mr. President, so you mean to tell me that you're actually going to be paying your employees more than what you submitted in this bid? Because the state prevailing rate is higher. So you mean to tell me that you're actually going to take a loss? That you're going to pay your more than what your bid?
Yes, this is correct. And actually, employee works in our company maybe about 5 to 7% for Essex County. So the other profit will cover this small loss. We basically absorb the rate, and to keep employee busy and to continue service to Essex County, we did so. In this case, the profit from other customers by percentage will cover the difference. It's true.
Mr. McInerney, Freeholder Richardson.
Mr. President, I'm not going to question how this vendor calculates his bid. I guess the issue is just hearing now that he doesn't make any money on this contract. If I heard that correctly, just raises more questions. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I don't understand.
We were basically making
like 80 to 90%. excuse me, sir, there wasn't a great connection, so some of it was muffled, so in all deference to the owner, we really didn't get a good, I really didn't hear clearly all of what he said, so,
Well, if I may, Mr. President, I think the issue is that the Oxford company had the winning award, and our engineer and our staff have represented that we've been well served by this company. Certainly, they had the contract last year. We've been well served, and they're recommending that they be re-engaged, and they serve us well. And I'm not so sure how far we delve into his finances. If he's using his opportunity to cover some of his overhead and keep his guys busy, that's his call and to our benefit. It's not our call to make. I mean, he's operating his business. He's in the business to make money overall. That's his business. And if he's saying he pays his guys what he pays his guys the prevailing rate, then it's not for us to debate that as far as I'm concerned. It's a good price for the County of Essex. We get great service according to our own people. What are we complaining about?
no, I agree with you, Mr. Jackson, but clearly, when I looked at that schedule, there was reason for,
Of course, yeah, I understand.
questions to ask. And to have him back on and then additionally say, I don't make any money on the contract, it's not typically what we hear. So that said, I agree with you. He put a bid in, he won the bid, but at the same time, there's definitely rationale for the level of questioning the board has done.
No question. And I think my level of concern would be much higher if we didn't have experience. We've got good experience, so.
So through you, Mr. President, Freeholder Richardson here. In all due respect, Mr. Jackson, I don't think I've ever heard you say that there was a vendor that you didn't like, or any of your directors have ever said that there was a vendor that they didn't get good service from. So what are we talking about?
That very well may be true, Mr. Vice President, because we don't bring anybody to the board with whom we don't have confidence.
Freeholder President, Freeholder Cooper. How long has this vendor been doing business with Essex County? Mr. Jackson.
Sanjeev Varghese, County Engineer. We had Oxford Electric at least for 3-4 years with us, and they do good business. They do good electric work. They submit certified payroll, which they submit to the state, which is a requirement. If there's any complaint about the certified payroll, the state comes and audits them. And they cannot just forge these documents. These are certified payroll. That can cause them to bar themselves from business.
How many Essex County residents do they employ, if any?
Igor?
Say again, I didn't hear. How many Essex County what?
Employees do you have?
Please state your name for the record.
Not really.
I can, according to the.
How many Essex County? Say again.
It's not profile.
Didi, can you tell me what the question is?
I didn't hear it either.
The question was, how many employees do you have and how many of those are from Essex County?
Oh, we have 6 employees in the company. It's not a big company. And we don't have residents from Essex County, but I understand the call. If we need to take employee, the first employee will be from Essex County. I have no problem with that. Yeah. 6 employees total.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yeah.
Freeholder Rufus Johnson speaking. I heard in his speaking that he said he was just trying to keep his workers working And we have to look at the time that we're in right now too, at this pandemic, and a lot of people not getting any work. But that's not to say that he shouldn't be doing things by certain rules and regulations. But we have to look at this time too that we're in, and he's keeping food on their tables. Thank you.
Freeholder President, Freeholder Cooper here again. Administrator Jackson, when we, or Jay probably, when we did this bid related to the hourly rate that you guys talked about earlier, what was the question that was asked that the vendor was supposed to respond to?
Julius Coultry, Freeholder, can you repeat that question?
In the bid specs, and keep in mind we don't have all of that here that we're deliberating over. What was the question that the vendor listed that rate down? What were they responding to when they put in that $77?
They were responding to a list of 5 items, which is 1, electrician, foreman, regular time, approximately 2,000 hours. And the rate for one of the vendors here is $107.37. And number 2 was an electrician, foreman, overtime. Approximately hours of overtime would have been 150, and their hourly unit price was $214.74. Next one was an electrician journeyman regular time for approximately 2,500 hours at $91.76. Number 4 was an electrician journeyman overtime, approximately 300 hours at $183.52. And then number 5 was material markup with a percentage and approximately $150, which would be $15,000. Now, these are approximate hours. It could be more or less depending on, if there's an emergency or something like that, something breaks, it's a bigger project. Did I answer your question, Freeholder?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Coultry, through you, Mr. President, Freeholder Richardson. So it sounds like those bids that you just said, those numbers you just referenced are the state prevailing wage bids. So it sounds like whoever that other contractor is actually gave you the state prevailing wage rates. Would that be accurate?
Through you, Mr. President, Julius Coultry, that was Venura from Hackensack.
No, I was asking about those rates. They sound like the state prevailing rates.
Through you, Mr. President, I don't know the state prevailing wage rate.
Freeholder President, is this a bid? This is Freeholder Cooper again. I'm sorry. This is a bid, right? So you guys evaluate it based upon price, correct? Or Michael, is this a bid? And this was based upon price?
This is a bid.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I can also read off another vendor if you would like. I have Sal Electric, which number 1 was an electrician foreman regular time was $90 an hour. Electrician foreman overtime was $180 an hour. The electrician journeyman regular time was $78 an hour. Electrician journeyman overtime is $180 an hour. And the last one of the 4 was electrician, foreman, regular time, $105 an hour and 14 cents. Electrician, foreman, overtime is $157.71. Electrician, journeyman, regular time is $89.86. Electrician, journeyman, overtime was $134.79. They were the 4 bids.
Through you, Mr. President, Freeholder Richardson here. So another question is, this is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder bid?
Through you, Mr. President, Julius Coulter, yes, Freeholder.
But you don't always take the lowest responsible and responsive bidder.
The only time we don't, if it's a competitive contract or an RFP and is evaluated, or in a regular bid, if there is, like the other day, there was a vendor who was non-responsive, failed to submit the half of the price page. So that person was rejected because of failing to submit all the proper paperwork.
But I can recall more than one occasion where the lowest responsive and responsible bidder did not get the contract. That's the only point I'm making. There are times when you don't take the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, correct?
That only if it is a competitive contract or RFP, request for a proposal, then they are evaluated and price does not have a significant bearing.
So RFP is different from a bid.
Correct. Yes, sir.
So I'm only asking about a bid. I didn't ask about an RFP.
If we take the lowest responsible bidder unless they have deficiencies in their bid.
This is Sanjeev Varghese, the county engineer. The public contracts law states that you must take the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. There's no if and but.
Mr. President, it's Courtney Gassion, Essex County Council. Mr. Varghese is correct. We are obligated by law to take the lowest responsive and responsible bidder under the public contracts law unless there is a deficiency or a defect that is uncurable in the lowest responsive and responsible bid and it gets thrown out. Then we go to the next lowest responsive and responsible bid. But we are obligated by law to take that. There's no alternative in a bid process.
Through you, Mr. President, Mr. Polavecchio, I don't remember the exact instance, but you and I did have a discussion about one item not too long ago that came before the board, and when he did not take the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, and there was no talk of any deficiency. Am I right in that, Mr. Polavecchio? Do you recall that?
I don't recall that for a bid. If it was, it would have been an RFP or it would have been a competitive contract. I don't recall that. Usually we don't get a bid that's brought to us if it's not the lowest responsible and responsible. It would have already been taken out and we would get the second. We wouldn't even know about the first one because it would have been disqualified.
So through you, Mr. President, let me see if I recall. I think the numbers were pretty close, but it still wasn't the lowest.
If it was $1 difference, it wouldn't matter. Even if it was low, you would have to take it if it was $1.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that's not what happened. I'm gonna go back and go through this and try to find that.
I just don't remember that. Not for a straight bid.
Mr. President, I'm done.
So understanding and hearing those points, Mr. Vice President, loud and clear, and Mr. McInerney, let me start with you, Mr. McInerney. What's your recommendation to the board?
Mr. President, my rationale for the questioning initially was because it just was an anomaly. I didn't see bids like that stacked side by side, seeing a straight rate for all for the same rate for the different levels of expertise and for the regular and overtime. Initially, I asked the question what it was about. The business administrator at that time didn't know, so he said, I can't answer that. At that point in time is when I said, well, then let's hold it. Subsequently, it was answered. And what else was said is that, and the business administrator said as well, I would probably have questions too if we didn't have experience with this vendor. So my recommendation is this is the lowest responsible bid. I don't think we have any other choice than to vote on it.
Okay. Freeholders, additional questions or comments? Before we go to a mover in a second, Mr. Vice President, do you want to make a do you want to make a motion?
No, I don't want to make a motion.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Somebody remind me what number this is?
Number 8, Mr. President.
Number 8.
Number 8. Thank you. Number 8. So we're going to go with the same mover. So we have a motion from Palmaris and a second from Siebel. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Siebel.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
No.
Freeholder Palmaris.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
No.
So moved.
Okay. Madam Clerk, let's move to resolution, 21 and 39. 21 is recognizing the first Friday in June is National Gun Violence Awareness Day, and 39 is the Adopt the Cat Month resolution. We can read them into the record at a later time. I have a motion from Freeholder Luciano and a second from Freeholder Mercado. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, do you have any opportunity for question on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Absolutely. I'll withdraw the motion and turn the floor to Freeholder Palmaris.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'd like to ask for, if I may, ask my colleague Freeholder Cooper for inclusion on 39.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Freeholder. I appreciate it.
Through you, Mr. President, this is Freeholder Richardson. I'd like to be included in both 21 and 39.
I would also like to be included in both. Perhaps it can be by acclamation.
Okay. I'm fine on acclamation on 21. Freeholder Cooper, are you fine on acclamation on 39?
Yes, that's what I was going to suggest. Yes.
Okay. Still have a motion from Freeholder Luciano and a second from Freeholder Mercado on 21 and 39. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Palmaris.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Siebel.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to resolution number 40, which is a non-binding resolution sponsored by both me, Vice President Richardson, and Freeholder Johnson. It is a resolution asking that the Department of Homeland Security and Immigration and Customs, otherwise known as ICE, promptly grant the release of all detainees currently detained to their immigration status. That would include the ICE detainees that are in our facility. The resolution was circulated and is fairly self-explanatory. Just questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Freeholder Siebel.
Okay. I didn't, the resolution, I got all my information yesterday, and this was not on the agenda. And I didn't receive this until by email this afternoon, about an hour or so before the meeting. So I have had little or no time to go over it. I did notice one thing which stood out to me. And let me just say that I don't believe that we ought to have the situation we have with immigration in this country, because except for those who were brought over as slaves or who were born here as Indians, all of us are immigrants, and I don't like the procedure that this country is using. However, this resolution, from what I see, is not specific enough. It talks about releasing all the ICE detainees, but some of the ICE detainees have created criminal actions. I have no problem releasing those who are here simply because they're immigrants. But if they're there because of criminal activity, they should just not automatically be released. If they murdered someone, they shouldn't just automatically be released. And this resolution does not speak to that. And I think the resolution has to be more specific in terms of who is released and who is not released. And I might add that there have been some that have been released, but ICE is not being honest about the county indicating how many were not, and so on. They're having all kinds of restrictions, which I think are totally wrong. And I'm all for releasing those who are simply incarcerated because they're immigrants. It's ridiculous, but I'd like the resolution to be more specific. I think we should wait on the resolution until we have more specifics to it, perhaps to the next meeting. Thank you.
Mr. President?
There we go. Freeholder Palmares.
Thank you, sir. I too, regrettably, we didn't get this till kind of late, and I didn't have as much time as I would like to have dedicated to go over it. I would like to ask a couple of questions of administration and, very high level. Mr. Jackson, if you may, and perhaps you can defer to others. But it is my understanding about a year ago, that in Essex County, our ICE population was in the neighborhood of about 800 or so. Is that correct? Give or take? That's what I recall.
That is correct.
Okay, sir. Thank you. And today, would it be fair to say we have about half of that, give or take 400? Is that in the neighborhood of where we are today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has ICE been releasing nonviolent offenders at the Essex County Correctional Facility in the last 6-8 weeks that we've had the pandemic going on? Has there been a regular flow of releases of nonviolent offenders?
There have been releases. I don't know their status, Mr. Freeholder, but there have been regular releases by ICE of detainees. I
asked that because, thank you, sir. I get the county updates too with the pandemic and what we're doing at the Essex County Correctional Facility. And it's not clear to me what our exact number of population is, although it would appear to be it's about half of what we had last year. And I'm not sure exactly what ICE detainees are left. And I'd like to know a little bit more about that. And I would be supportive if we would adjourn this to learn a little bit more. I don't feel very well prepared to support something that I haven't had a chance to fully learn about. And I think it's very important that we compare the numbers about what's going on very much here in Essex County. And I realize that this is a national message, but it's also here as a microcosm, and I would feel more comfortable adjourning it until we have more information. Thank you.
Thank you,
President Mercado.
Sure, Freeholder Mercado.
Yes, I concur with my two colleagues, Sebo and Parmers. We just received this, just yesterday, and we would like more time to review it, and so I'm asking that we table this to the next meeting.
Sure, and I don't think that's a problem. I just want to obviously want to make sure my co-sponsors would be comfortable with that. I don't have any issue with potentially taking some more input. I just want to be clear, Madam Clerk, was the resolution distributed yesterday? I thought we distributed it yesterday.
Through you, Mr. President, I believe our council distributed this resolution yesterday.
Okay.
It went out yesterday.
Okay.
Mr. President, and I will, and for the record, let me add that I did receive it yesterday, but it was late in the afternoon, and so I did not have time to start looking it over today. So I want to be clear. I don't want to fault our esteemed counselor here for not doing his job, or our esteemed Madam Clerk. So for my purposes, it was received yesterday, but I did not have time to review it till today.
Okay.
If I might add to that, I didn't find out until about an hour or so before the meeting that it was on the agenda. I knew about the resolution quite a while ago, but I didn't see the resolution, the final resolution, until about an hour or so before the meeting. And I didn't even know it was on the agenda until today. And I too, I think we ought to adjourn it and give us all a chance to really look at it and perhaps revise it a little bit in terms of what I said, in terms of who was released. And I think there ought to be more concern placed on that before we actually vote. Thank you.
Okay. I have no issue with taking.
Through you, Mr. President, Freeholder Richardson. Yeah, I think it makes sense. Let's give our colleagues an opportunity to take a look at it, and something they want to tweak or they want to put inside the document. Let's give them the opportunity to do so. Thanks. Yeah.
Madam Clerk, I'm sorry. Thank you, Freeholder Johnson.
Through you, Mr. President, I don't mind either. We can hold off until the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, and Mr. Parlavecchio, let's work to get as much input before the meeting and plan to relist this for the meeting on June 10th.
Yes.
Okay. Moving to
Mr. President, before you go off with that, I would recommend you take a motion and a second to adjourn number 40 to the meeting of June 10th.
okay, I'll move to adjourn number 40 until the meeting of June 10th. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Whoever.
Take your pick, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Freeholder Siebel.
Thank you.
Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Pomares.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Siebel.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to resolutions 22 through 38. We have a motion from Freeholder Mercado and a second from Freeholder Pomares. We'll call Madam Clerk.
Mr. President, can I comment on that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes, I'd like to be included. In fact, I would recommend that it be by acclamation.
I have no issue. Madam Clerk? That's fine. And Freeholders, additional questions or comments on 22 through 38?
All by acclamation, Mr. President?
I have no issue. Okay, we'll call Madam Clerk.
Okay. Roll call.
Roll call.
And Mr. President, could you state the mover and the second for me again, please?
Freeholder Mercado and Freeholder Palmeris.
Thank you. Freeholder Sebald.
Yes.
Freeholder Vice President Richardson.
Yes.
Freeholder Palmares.
Yes.
Freeholder Mercado.
Yes.
Freeholder Luciano.
Yes.
Freeholder Johnson.
Yes.
Freeholder Graham.
Yes.
Freeholder Cooper.
Yes.
Freeholder President Gill.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We've taken Resolution 41. Moving to report of board committees. Any board committee reports? Legislative reports? Written communication? Unfinished business? New business? Freeholders, do we have any new business to discuss? Okay. Seeing none, public comment. Madam Clerk, let's move to the public comment session on non-agenda items. We will, since we're meeting remotely, the public has had the opportunity to submit questions and comments for consideration. Madam Clerk, please state the names of the constituents, identify the topic, and you will read their comments and questions into the record at a later time, and we will respond to them in writing.
Mr. President, the first public comment is from Douglas Pentland. No address given. This is regarding a comment regarding ICE, and these similar comments were submitted by Jake Efros, Hillel Efros, Scott Limbacher, and Ayala Gustin. I will read the public comment. Hello, my name is Douglas, and I'm calling you to urge you and the rest of the Freeholder Board to release all people you are incarcerating for ICE amidst the COVID pandemic. Essex County freeholders refuse to exercise even the most basic oversight of the jail, despite the fact that 2 people have died in the jails in the last 2 months. Why have you not appointed anyone to the oversight board you voted for last December? The freeholders also continue to try to shift the responsibility for the ICE contract to the Trump administration, despite the fact that Essex County has been incarcerating people for ICE since the Bush administration, and the freeholder board voted to more than double the number of people incarcerated during the Obama administration. It is dishonest and just that you tell constituents that you're doing a service for the people you're incarcerating in such abject conditions by keeping them close to their families. We know the real reason you contract with ICE for the money. Will you stop cooperating with ICE and the Trump administration, who continue to spread the virus by deporting people from the epicenter of the pandemic? Brendan Gill has announced he will introduce a resolution to release detainees at the Essex County Correctional Facility. Will you publicly support this resolution, and will you publicly support the release of all detainees and inmates and an end to ICE arrests and transfers between the facilities and the termination of the ICE contract you supported? This morning, a lawsuit was filed to release all detainees at the Elizabeth Detention Center, a death trap during the COVID-19 pandemic. Does your office commit to supporting the demands of this lawsuit? What is your office position on this lawsuit? The next public comment is also regarding ICE, and this is from Muladin Pablo, no address given. Hello, I'm writing to request that the Essex County Freeholders immediately pass a resolution to release all immigrants incarcerated under ICE contract in Essex County. As long as Essex County continues to incarcerate people for ICE, it will be facilitating ICE brutal enforcement activities, tear families apart, and help spread the virus. This Tuesday, the NJ ICE field office deported New Jersey worker Hector Garcia Mendoza, a named plaintiff in a lawsuit calling for all people being incarcerated by ICE at the for-profit Core Civic Detention Center in Elizabeth to be released. This is a continuation of a pattern of retaliatory behavior that has been witnessed for many years. ICE was punishing Hector for speaking out about the dangerously inhumane conditions under which people are being held by ICE in New Jersey. You should recognize this type of behavior. It is the same tactic that was used against Dave Johnson in 2014. Dave bluntly described his time inside Essex County Jail the day after he was released. He said they treat dogs better, and he asked that anyone who was assembled that day, month after his release. Dave was separated from his fiance, his 5 children, his granddaughter, when he was swiftly deported. Yesterday was the 6th anniversary of Dave's deportation. The only thing that NJ ICE field office has learned in that time is how to act even more swiftly. It was only days between Hector adding his name to that lawsuit and his deportation. Sadly, Hector's family and his attorney have been unable to locate him since he crossed the U.S.-Mexico border, and they fear for his safety. The NJ ICE field office acted without concern for Hector or his family and without concern for spreading the virus. Hector's plane was one of 29 chartered flights out on Tuesday alone. In addition to passing the resolution to release all detainees, will you meet with John Descaris and urge him to release all detainees in New Jersey and stop all deportations and cease all enforcement operations? Thank you very much. The next public comment is from Nicole Parcher, no address given. Hi, my name is Nicole Parcher. I'm glad to hear that you plan to introduce a resolution to free all immigrants incarcerated under ICE contract in Essex County. However, as long as Essex County continues to incarcerate people for ICE, it will be facilitating its brutal enforcement activities that tear apart families and help to spread the virus. This too, New Jersey ICE field office departed a New Jersey worker, Hector Garcia Mendoza, a named plaintiff in a lawsuit calling for all people incarcerated by ICE for the Profit Civic Accord Detention Center in Elizabeth to be released. This is a continuation of a pattern of retaliatory behavior that we've witnessed for many years. ICE was punishing Hector for speaking out about the dangerously inhumane conditions under which people are held by ICE in New Jersey. You should recognize this type of behavior as the same tactic that was used by Dave Johnson. It appears to be the same comment that was held by the prior commentator. It is pretty much the same, and it will be recorded in its full extent in the record. The next public comment is from Vegas Longrois, no address given. Dear freeholders of Essex County, my name is Vegas Longlos. I am a medical student at the Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. I'm writing you to call upon you to end the contract with ICE. Currently, the detainees are being housed in the dormitory-style rooms with 40 people in one room. It is impossible for detainees to practice social distance. Nationwide, 70% of detainees who have been tested for COVID-19 test positive. This is an egregious health hazard during a pandemic. It is inhumane and immoral to hold people, especially those who are nonviolent offenders, in situations that can cause them to get ill and possibly die. Best wishes. The next public comment comes from Matt Dragon of West Orange. Please share the most recent result of antibody testing at ECC. I know I stopped you from sharing the data about the prisoners. What about county and Marshall inmates? And the last update I could find from a month ago, 70% of ICE prisoners held in the dorms and 30% of the cell block population who have been tested were affected. We should be open and transparent to the residents about what the ongoing counts look like. 2 of our inmates at ECCF have died in the past few weeks. We have their names. Why have their names not been released? What is the policy for releasing the names of those who die in a county custody? Please do not tell me it's an active investigation. That has never covered the names of the deceased previously. If the prosecutor will not share the information, then the county administration should instruct the ECCF staff to release the name. If you won't do that, please provide the legal reasoning why. Since you have not provided the actual financial details of how the exact expenses per inmate were arrived at such that the ICE contract is revenue neutral. I am being forced to try to reconstruct it off of publicly available data. The recently renewed agreement with Union County, I think, listed a price of $98 a day for a presumably criminal prisoner. There was some reporting that a few years ago, ICE was paying $108 a day for civil detainees. ICE contracts page lists a rate of $105 a day. What is the current rate? If it's more than $98 a day, what makes holding a civil detainee in a dorm setting more expensive than holding a criminal detainee in a cell block? Lastly, I urge all freeholders to vote in support of the resolution to call for the release of those imprisoned by ICE. It is the right thing to do, even more so given the public health crisis. As you've seen from the people attending the meetings, outreach to you individually, petitions, the outreach to you individually, petitions, etc. There's a wide-ranging support for this position. It is the morally and ethically responsible thing to do, and is also the only reasonable response to the need to depopulate the facility to allow any amount of social distancing being recommended by county, state, and federal health officials. The next public comment is from Kathy O'Leary of Pax Christi, New Jersey. Dear Freeholder board members, I will start as I usually do. There will be no justice until you end the contract with ICE, until all immigrant detainees are free, and until you stop seeing people in your custody as units from which revenue is derived rather than as children of God. This past Tuesday, we learned that Hector Garcia Mendoza is being deported from the Elizabeth Detention Center. He is one of 4 plaintiffs named in a lawsuit to release all detainees from this detention center due to already miserable conditions that are deteriorating during the pandemic. Hector was taken with no notice to his attorneys or his family. He was put on a plane, as Rita Dentino from Casa Freehold put it, thrown across the border like a piece of trash. He was deposited in Nueve Laredo, a place known for cartel activity, including drug trafficking and forced labor. It is a place where it is suspected that the cartels are managing to spread the virus by disappearing people who ICE continues to deport. This is who you are cooperating with, an agency that has no respect for human dignity of human life. Why do you continue? You claim that it's for the benefit of the people you incarcerate. Do you understand how cruel you sound? People have been unable to visit their loved ones for 2.5 months. Even phone calls have been significantly curtailed because of this prolonged lockdown that you have subjected them to. You say that ICE would only send them further away if it's not for your facility, but we know ICE sends people where they want to, when they want to. People with families in New Jersey are currently being held all over the country. You should also know that on March 12th, just as pandemic was beginning to take hold in New Jersey, ICE transferred 48 people to Batavia, New York, likely spreading the virus. The Batavia facility is now a hotspot for COVID-19 infections. You also say that for some reason your jail is better because it is not for-profit entity like Elizabeth Detention Center. Need I remind you that DHS itself ranked the Essex County Jail as having some of the most inhumane conditions in all the country? Need I also remind you that the Essex County executive is very plain about his motives for signing and maintaining this contract, which resolve entirely around generating revenue. The Essex County executive has engaged in the dehumanization of the people at the Essex County Jail. He's viewed everyone at the jail as revenue from which revenue are to be derived. This goes for everyone at the jail and not just those you incarcerate for ICE. It makes sense that the Essex County Executive can stomach such treatment by ICE. He cannot see their faces. He only can see dollar signs. What about you? Can the members of the Freeholder Board see the people in the jail as human, being deserving of mercy and compassion? If you can continue this contract, if you can, how can you continue this contract with this cooperation with an agency that holds human lives of people in such low regard? I ask you to terminate the ICE contract, and I ask you to join with immigrants and their families and advocates that struggle to end all immigration detention. I further ask you to work with all incarcerated people, their families, and criminal justice advocates to drastically reduce incarceration, not just during the pandemic, but always. We are children. We are all children of God. We are all equal in his eyes. We are all deserving of his love and compassion and forgiveness. The next public comment is from Stacy Gregg. No address given. One, this open public portion of your virtual meeting needs to be done better. Is not in the spirit and intent of the Open Public Meetings Act, which is to give citizens a voice in the ongoing business of government. The comments are being required prior to the meeting even happening. In my opinion, probably in the opinion of any judge worth his weight in salt, this is not participation at all in the meeting, since no one is psychic and knows what will transpire at the meetings. Therefore, the way these meetings are set up, no one can comment from the public regarding what the freeholders are doing. No questions regarding contracts and other business proposed have been represented from the public. Two, changing and making the cutoff when comments are allowed to be submitted from 2 p.m. to 12 is more evidence of purposely limited public participation. It shows a tone-deaf response to the public that has been asking for improved system for citizens to fully participate in live time. The job of the freeholders of Essex County involves listening to the citizens prior to decisions that impact their community lives. 4, the zoo is not a good time to be doing an expansion with crowded sitting since coronavirus. Should have plans abandoned permanently. 5, in the ICE contract. Mr. President, that includes all the public comments received. Mr. President, that concludes the public comment section portion of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Moving to freeholder comment session, and we should have recognized this at the beginning of the meeting, and for that I am sincerely sorry, but I wanted to send our thoughts and condolences to our longtime employee, Debbie Marvel, on the loss of her husband, Thomas Lawrence Marvel. It was resolution number 38 in the memoriams that we approved tonight. Unfortunately, his life was cut short very young at the age of 63. Again, just wanted to especially recognize Debbie, her family, and let her know that we're thinking of her at this time. Freeholders, any additional comments?
Through you, Mr. President, I want to echo those sentiments to Debbie Marvel and on the loss of her husband. It's a tough time. Any time is a tough time, but this is even more difficult around this pandemic and not being able to really gather and like we used to. So I definitely want to echo those sentiments. But I also, if any other freeholders have some comments about Miss Debbie Marvel, go ahead and make them, because I want to take a moment and do something different. I have another comment. So you guys, if you have comments would Debbie Marvel please make them? Because I want to come back.
To you, Mr. President. As you know, Deborah Marvel has always been the backbone to this office, to our office. She is one that makes things happen here in our office. And I think we all owe her a lot of gratitude for the work that she does and how she goes about doing it every day. And some of the stuff she takes from some of us at times, you know, but she still stands strong and she gets the job done. So Debbie, you'll always be in our hearts and our souls. And God bless you. And hey, we're always there for you if you need us. Thank you.
May I add to those statements, Mr. President?
Yes.
It's a very, very sad time for Debbie, and we should all be aware that her husband did not die from the coronavirus. He had been sick for a long time, and it's truly unfortunate that he died, and he died so young. And my heart really goes out to Debbie Marvel, and I know that you all feel the same way. She's really a valuable member of our office, and it is so sad that she had to have this untimely loss. Thank you.
Mr. President, Freeholder Mercado.
Freeholder.
Yeah, I want to extend to Deborah. She has worked tirelessly for this county. Although I've only been here for a short period of time, I know that the work that she does for all of us is impeccable. And I want to extend my sincere condolences and prayers to Debbie and her family and let her know that we are all here for you, Deb. Thank you.
Freeholder Gil, may I say a few words?
Sure.
My heart goes out to Debbie. I was aware of the long battle that her husband had fighting a long-term illness. She is an incredible partner in the Freeholder office with me. I value her so much, and I value and appreciate the fact of the mutual respect we have for each other and the long-term commitment she's had to the county. I think she's been an employee of the county for over 40 years. So that has to say a lot. And my thoughts and prayers and my heart goes out to her.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Through you, Mr. President, it's Freeholder Richardson.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to take this time to condemn the senseless, brutal murder of George Floyd in Minnesota. Should not have happened. It's a modern day lynching by law enforcement, and folks like that need to be arrested and given a maximum sentence allowable by law. Those things should never happen in this country. Sick and tired of it. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Freeholder President, this is Freeholder Cooper.
Freeholder Cooper.
I wanted to also express my condolences to Debbie and her family on this untimely loss. It's especially difficult at this time when you can't have other friends and family to surround you and support you during your time of grieving. I also wanted to express my condolences to the other staff person who equally lost her husband unexpectedly as well. Our hearts and prayers are with the both of them during their time of need. Thank you.
Thank you, Freeholder Cooper. I'm not sure if Freeholder Siebel was trying to.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, may I just add my remarks to something that Freeholder Vice President Wayne Richardson says? Freeholder, I agree with you totally and completely. And the part that really bothers me about this whole thing is that sometimes we think this country is changing for the better. And this shows in many ways we're standing still and it's not getting any better. This was a horrible, horrible, horrible incident. And I really feel that we can do better as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, Freeholder Siebel. Freeholders, additional comments? Okay. Hearing or seeing none, then a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Mercado.
Meeting is
Second,
adjourned.
Richards.